Screw it, Boyd. Welcome, huge movie fanatic Nate, stopping on by, and as promised, seeing as how I reviewed the original Poltergeist, and then Poltergeist 2, and then Poltergeist 3, I thought it only made sense, seeing as how I bought this Blu-ray years ago and never actually watched it. Thought it only made sense since I was reviewing the other Poltergeist films that I reviewed the most recent Poltergeist film from in 2014. The Blu-ray says 2015, so I don't know if that's when it came out in the theater or on Blu-ray or whatever, but the Poltergeist remake, as it were. And since I actually do own the disc only here in a family video previously viewed box 3D version, I thought it only made sense to also review briefly at the very end the 3D Blu-ray aspect of this release. So with no further ado, I'm coming at you to review Poltergeist remake. Oh my gosh. So I got this Blu-ray a long time ago, previously viewed from family video, for maximum $3. I might have got two Blu-rays for $5 together, which would make it $2.50 for this title, but at any rate I didn't pay any more than $3 for the 3D Blu-ray of Poltergeist remake, so that was kind of cool. My history doesn't go back very far on this title at all. I just saw it for the first time maybe a week or two ago, and then I'm like, I didn't review it, then I'm like, crap, I pretty much forgot it, so I gotta watch it again. So I just rewatched it just today in 3D, so that was kind of interesting. So to start the review off, I will say this is not horrible. It's probably one of, in my opinion, one of the better remakes, maybe on tier with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake from 2003. This thing is mid-level. It's not completely horrible. It's a Ghost House Pictures production, which is basically a Sam Raimi, Rob Tappert, and whoever the hell else is involved in Ghost House Pictures production. So just like with The Grudge that they did way back in 2004, and so much of the the early 20th or 21st century North American horror, it does have a little bit of Asian horror influences, and me not being an Asian horror aficionado didn't really like that. There's a lot of Asian horror influences imagery in this movie, and pretty much all of the visual creepy aspects of this movie, or a lot of it, is pretty much what I would regard as Asian horror influenced. So unlike the original movie where the family's been living in the house, I don't think we really know how long the family's been living in the house in the original movie, but before the stuff starts going goofy. But this movie, the family just moves in. Sam Rockwell is the dad and some chick is the mom, and honestly the family is more or less forgettable. You got this creepy looking, what could be a Mia Farrow son child, son. I don't mean son child in the hippie sense. I mean a Mia Farrow, boy who could very well be Mia Farrow's, Jesus Christ, a boy who could very well be Mia Farrow's bloodline, and creepy pale boy who at the very beginning of the movie I thought the boy was going to be the Carol Ann character, because he seemed to be more in tune with stuff early on in the film, but it does turn out to be the youngest daughter. It's the same family dynamic, mom, dad, older daughter, younger son, and youngest Carol Ann character. I want to say that the youngest girl's name is Maddie in this film, but they're just basically arriving at, well, I guess they're actually stopping at this house to shop, to get a tour of the house, and basically they move in, and of course it's the scary tree, which it looks like a tree that should belong in more like in the swamp or the bayou or something. It's kind of a tree that doesn't really look like it goes in the backyard of a house, but right off the bat, I mean, one gets the sense of this movie being, obviously 2014-15, very corporate. The music score is very largely forgettable, like so many music scores done these days. I swear, either movies now are completely manufactured in AI, or at least the majority of the film scores that have been going on for, I'd say, the better part of the 21st century. I mean, they could be just basically AI scores, because so many of them, I'm not saying all of them, there's some gems that pop up here and there, but so many of the scores in movies like these are just so freaking devoid of humanity and soul. I mean, contrast this to the Jerry Goldsmith music in the first Poltergeist movie. I mean, it's like, it's not just night and day, it's just like night and, oh my God. I mean, the music, as I've talked about in my Poltergeist review of the original film, the music in that movie and the Carol Ann theme and so many of the other themes and music in the movie is just unbelievably, gorgeous and beautiful. You wouldn't even necessarily know there's a score in this movie. It's so bland and boring, and it's so funny how the title Poltergeist appears early on in this film as they're approaching the house, the house that they're going to tour and then move into. We just pan up to the power lines and we see the grass there, and the word in like black, like it's burned into the green grass, just kind of fades in on the grass underneath the power lines. Poltergeist fades in and then it fades out, and it's just like, who the hell's idea was that, and what's the purpose behind that? It is just so weird to me. One of the things I did think was kind of cool about the remake is early on, very early on, when they move in or just getting the tour of the house or whatever, the youngest girl is like, just drawn to the closet in what will become her bedroom, which I think is interesting because the closet doesn't become a culprit in the original film until a little bit later on. So I do feel like that is a little bit of competency in this remake by making, seeing as how they follow suit. As the original film, the closet is the main doorway in this film as well, but much more heavily so. And I do feel like that is a kind of a competent upgrade or aspect to this movie of very early on in the film making the closet the subtle interest point of one of the characters, which will go on to be the main gateway, or the in-way, I guess, the indoor versus the outdoor in this story, very much like with the original film. So I did think that was actually kind of cool how the closet became instantly a point of interest for the youngest daughter, who is probably, as is mentioned very briefly in this remake, it is kind of the thing they go with in the second film and the third film of the original trilogy, is that the Carol Ann character, I'm just going to call her the Carol Ann character, well, Maddie, whatever. I mean, Carol Ann just rolls off the tongue a lot better than Maddie, but is maybe a little more sensitive to, whatever you want to call it, poltergeist or ghost, situations that are prevalent in the house. So she's instantly drawn to the closet, which I thought was actually a cool aspect. So the boy's basically, his room is basically, he doesn't share a room with the Carol Ann, I'll just say Carol Ann character of this film, which is kind of interesting. That's a diversion from the original film. They actually give the Carol Ann character her own room, which makes sense because her room is the one in this remake that is the doorway to the other side, if you will. And that's kind of interesting how there's two aspects of this movie, at least that I found out or realized, that kind of is a little bit of nods to the original second film, like Poltergeist 2. So like the fact that we do kind of see a lot of, a decent glimpse of like the other side in this movie. And there's also another aspect that is a little wink to the original Poltergeist 2, which I'll talk about a little later on. But it's kind of cool. I will say that instead of having the youngest girl and the young boy in the same bedroom like the original film, it is cool that they have their own bedroom, and the boy, they put him in the attic. He's got the skylight view of the scary tree, which I think is an interesting way to do the scary tree, and that way, him being in his own room makes him all the more scared when stuff goes bad, because he doesn't have someone else, the younger sister to help. They don't have them to protect each other and embrace each other when scary stuff happens. This way, each of the young kids, or all three of the kids, are presumably in their own bedroom or room, and it makes it more scary when the individual scary things are happening to each of the kids separately. I don't know if it's the theatrical poster, but I know the home video, one of the home video covers is basically the clown face, which is interesting. It makes one think the scary clown from the Poltergeist remake is going to play a huge part or a larger part in this film. It doesn't. The boy basically ends up finding within he opens a door in the wall and finds a box of, like a secret room with a box of old tattered clowns, which is kind of interesting. And of course the one that's featured on one of the Blu-ray or home video cover arts is the the clown face with the nose that's on a string, and it goes like, "Ooh, clink, ha 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 ha." Kind of scary or whatever. Obviously the remake is taking the scary clown of the original film and a little bit further, but the clown isn't featured in the movie nearly as much as one would think based on its heavy use on the North American home video cover art. I'm not familiar with the theatrical poster. It's possible it's the frickin' same image. I don't know. I mean, even though we've seen the theatrical poster here, I put that on the video later on after the review, so I haven't really seen it until I'm editing the video. So it'll be interesting to see if the theatrical poster is that clown face or if it's something else. But you know, based on the poster or cover art or whatever, you'd think the clown, scary clown, would be featured a little more, but alas it isn't. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I mean, things can get overused or whatever. So the clown, just be warned, if you're expecting a lot of scary clown doll mayhem in this movie, it's really not that numerous. Actually, for the most part, I don't disagree with the reworked structure of this movie. If you saw my review of the original film, you'll know that actually one of my problems, as much as I do think that's a really good film, and I think I gave it 3 stars, one of my problems with the original film is that it does seem to me like the structure is a little goofy, and I honestly think the reworked structure in the remake might work a little better than the structure in the original film. And as I said with the original film, although the structure doesn't really agree with me per se, I still can like appreciate it for being a little more unique and different. Usually usually especially a Steven Spielberg production would be a little more by the numbers and flow a little better. That's the one thing about the original film that I both like and don't like, because for me it doesn't flow, but that's kind of like maybe a positive because of the off-settling nature of the movie itself. So maybe that just enhances the original film by being, or at least putting to me in the structure and how, after Carol Ann is kidnapped, you got that middle point where they're all whispering at night in the living room, and then I don't know, you can watch my review for the original Poltergeist to see things that I'm not so keen on that. But what I'm trying to say very long-windedly is that the reworked structure of the same basic story in this movie I felt like was a very competent reworking. And also one of my complaints with the original film is that for my money it's a little too long, and they actually reworked this one down to basically 90 minutes, which I think is a really nice running time. But what I was getting at with the whole aspect of this movie and appreciating a lot of the things they reworked is that the famous scene where Carol Ann is in front of the TV and says "they're here" or whatever. Does she say "they're here" at the very beginning? Possibly. But that famous scene is at the very beginning of the original Poltergeist, whereas this one, that scene doesn't happen until like 20 minutes into the film, which I thought was kind of cool. I think they do a really decent, subtle, slowly setting things up and slow, just like with lights fading off and on and this and that, kind of slow build up to things in this movie, to the famous 20 minutes into this film, famous scene of the young girl in front of, now of course it's a flat screen HD TV, and it's, that obviously there's, when I did my review of the original film, I was like, how the hell are they going to do the, frickin', signing off for the evening and the thing going to fuzz? Well, they don't obviously bother with any of that, because that tradition on TV is long since past, with 24/7 programming on a bazillion more channels than anyone could want. So it's simply just the boy comes down the young boy, well there's only one boy in the movie, but comes down the stairs to see obviously the strobe flashing and this and that, and the girl in front of the TV doing the same kind of thing, although I wouldn't say it's nearly as interesting as the original film. But of course, she says at first, "Oh, they're coming," and you think kind of that's the replacement of the famous "they're here" line, but no. The end of the scene will, the girl in a very boring way. Of course, if you've seen the original movie, we know she goes, and it was a famous line that was like uttered in other movies in the 80s, like Explorers, and it was kind of a cultural phenomenon a little bit in the 80s there for a while. "They're here," the way that, what's her name, Carol Ann says the line in the original film. I was just like, I went like this when the girl just says it like this in the remake. "They're here." Just like in the most boring way possible. That would be an instance where I think they got it right the first time in the original film, and maybe they should just go for it and completely just say it exactly how she said it. Heather O'Rourke said it in the original film in this case, but they had to change it, of course, and in my opinion the famous line is completely boring and forgettable as it's uttered in this film. They're here. So obviously I already said they reworked the original film and condensed it down to 90 minutes, and a lot of the changes they made from the original film into the remake I actually mostly agree with, one of which is kind of a little bit of a wink to the Stanley Kubrick film The Shining, when the boy sees this baseball roll down, kind of like the scene in Danny and the twins, come play with us, you know, forever. Well, you know the movie. You know the scene, you know the lines, but they do a little bit of a probably overt Shining, I don't know, tribute in this movie where the ball rolls and gets the kid's attention and he brings it into the youngest daughter's room, puts it down to see it, you know, only to have it roll itself over to the closet door and go clunk. So a little bit of a nod to the Stanley Kubrick Shining in this movie as well. So I think it's like the first night everything is kind of goes, you know, the lights go this and that and stuff when they're asleep and stuff, and apparently they the evil poltergeist spirits do one of the most unimaginable things imaginable, one of the most heinous crimes against humanity by the evil spirits in this movie is them shorting out the oldest teenage daughter's cell phone, so much like what will happen when they cut the power on humanity whenever the hell they, oh my god, it's so bright. We're just gonna roll with it and enjoy the brightness. That's what happens this time of year on a cloudy day. So we're just gonna roll with it and enjoy the supernatural, you know, bright, dark aspect of the review, and just listen to me, and you can still mostly see my face, but when they cut the power and all the teenagers and 20-somethings are going to be without their phone, and oh my god, it'll be like that one movie, Clint Eastwood, the people don't know how to change a tire on the side of the road without looking up at on a YouTube video. But anyway, that's a whole nother, okay, that is really bright. So one of the things that happens over one of the first nights of whatever paranormal, well this ain't paranormal activity, poltergeist activity, is the oldest teenage daughter's phone gets shorted out, and it creates a lot of strife. And I think morale is generally low because they had to move into this more lower income neighborhood. Although you wouldn't even know it based on all the shots of, you know, the few shots of the neighborhood or whatever and stuff. But Dad goes off to improve family morale and maxes out his credit cards by buying a whole bunch of happiness. He buys a drone for the son, a new cell phone. Remember back in the day, I didn't have an iPhone at the time, but back in around this era, I want to say it was the very first time they ever came out with the iPhone SE or whatever, the one with the plastic back. Well, that phone I think is featured in this film. The oldest daughter's replacement phone. So the daughter gets a new phone, son gets a drone, wife gets earrings, and I think the youngest daughter gets pizza. So she kind of got the ass end of the deal, and stale pizza at that, and she says it's not good, but Dad spices it up when he adds the what are they? The chicken nuggets that the wife just made to the pizza. So it's chicken nugget pizza. He makes it. Sam Rockwell, incidentally. I'm not a huge fan of him or whatever, but I do find him to be one of the probably the most interesting performer in this movie. And I do actually. It's nowhere near as fun or realistic or as fun or spontaneous feeling as the father-mother dynamic in the original movie. But I do think the dynamic of the parents, mom and dad, in the remake, the Poltergeist remake, is fun, and Sam Rockwell is, you know, he's fun in this movie, I think, and the funnest performer in the movie. So it's just kind of funny how he maxes out all the credit cards, him being unemployed and the mom not even being employed at this time, maxing out the credit cards to buy their family a whole bunch of short-term happiness. That's a good little bit of, I don't know, advertising for this movie. Just if you're sad, if family morale is low, go out and buy some happiness. So about 30 minutes into this movie, the parents go to this random dinner party where the father hopes to get some, you know, with rich, affluent people that are 10 miles away, I think, from where they live, in a better neighborhood, and I think the dad hopes to get a job with these people. I don't even know why they're there, and when the guy mentions work, no one actually responds in any way. So it's like, I don't even know why they're even there, but they're there basically just to have mom and dad gone while all hell can break loose at the house. And this is another aspect of the remake that I almost feel like is actually better than potentially how it's handled in the original film. It feels weird saying this, but I guess because I've never been as much as I can appreciate the greatness that is in the original film, because I've never been a huge fan of the original Poltergeist. I guess I can, I don't know, recognize aspects of this movie that in my opinion are actually improvements over the original movie. So the fact that they were not, mom and dad were gone while the main havoc, or some of the first big havoc was happening, was actually a pretty cool creative writing choice. So while the mom and dad are gone, that's when the tree basically attacks the kid. Obviously completely CG these days and all that, and that goes without saying. And then the older daughter is distracted, so the two older kids are distracted while they kidnap the Carol Ann character Maddie in this film. You're just gonna have to bear with the brightness and the darkness. I don't want to frickin' bother with it, so you'll just have to bear with it. You can still see me. Or can you? Wow, okay, that's really dark. So the evil cell phone zapping poltergeists actually have the older brother, the older daughter, basically they're being terrorized individually while distracted, so they can kidnap the Carol Ann character, the youngest daughter, the Maddie in this movie, I want to say. And I gotta say, I actually like it. I actually like how she's kidnapped in this movie more than I like how she's kidnapped in the original film. Original film, she's kind of, in this big dramatic, visual effects, not visual effects, but visual movie trickery, where they just have the set sideways or whatever, and everything falls, into the closet, like it's getting sucked into the closet in a big dramatic event way in the original movie. It actually happens, and I'm really, really surprised that the route they took, and this is one of my favorite things about this remake, is that the way that the Carol Ann character, Maddie, is abducted in this movie is a much more quiet, subtle way, where she's just basically lured in with stuffed with pretty lights, and the light bulb will kind of go like this, and the light will come out of it and like float into the closet. That happens like with a lamp, and then the light on the ceiling, and then that doesn't work. So her favorite stuffed animal, this whatever it is, frickin' whatever it is, what do they call that thing with the horn? Anyway, a unicorn stuffed animal thing kind of starts rolling into the closet and like sits up, and it reminded me of Teddy from The Pit, the movie The Pit. So feel free to check out my movie review and Blu-ray review of that film as well, The Pit from the early 80s or whatever, a movie that I hold in pretty high regard. But when the unicorn sat up, it reminded me of Teddy. Oh, good Mrs. Livingston. Whatever. But anyway, that's another movie. But yeah, the way that Maddie is lured into the closet in this movie, I have to say, I kind of feel guilty for saying this about a 21st century remake of a horror film from the 80s, but I think the way that she's abducted and lured into the closet in this movie is far superior in a much more subtle and quiet way than it is in the original film. I mean, it's once again, it's complete opposites, where it's a big loud event, special effects, everything sucked in, everything in the bedroom sucked into the closet in the original. It's an event, but this is like a mirror, or not a mirror, but an exact opposite, where it's subtle, it's quiet, and it's done in a way where it's not so, it's creepier in a way, because it's not physically forcing her in there. It's luring her in there. We tried with bright lights, that didn't work. Well, we'll make her little whatever stuffed animal come in there, and she'll follow the stuffed animal in there, and that was really impressive, that scene. I was just like, wow. So that's another element to the remake, which I, as guilty as I am to say it, feel like is an improvement over the original film. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, at that random party that the parents are at, while all hell breaks loose, the youngest daughter is kidnapped and the other kids are terrorized. I thought this was really lame. I think the way they did it in the original movie, where later on, more towards the end of the movie, that the dad character finds out that their house is on a burial ground. They find out just by the schwanky people throwing the party or whatever, just mention it, like, yeah, and burial ground, and they made this joke like, well, at least it's not a sacred Indian burial ground or whatever the hell he said. So I was just like, okay, that's something that I don't agree with this remake, is just like just dropping it like that fact 1/3 of the way through. I mean, I think the way it's handled in the original, where we don't find out until later, and then the way we do find out is just like the audience is mad, just like the father is mad in the original film at that moment. This time, I don't know. You know, obviously the movie's not going to do everything. Yeah, so just like the original did or whatever. So it's just movies trying to just be different from the original, which is fine. But it's kind of interesting how with this movie that some things I like more in this, and some things that I like more in that. So it is kind of an interesting remake. And I do, you know, the more I talk about it, the more I probably like it even more than, well, I don't know. There's aspects of, you know, Texas Chainsaw 03 that I think are kind of fun or whatever, Jessica Biel to name one. But yeah, that I was really surprised 30 minutes in when that, you know, the whole burial ground was mentioned just so nonchalantly, and it's like, that's it. So later on, after the Maddie, Carol Ann character by the name of Maddie in this film is abducted, Dad hits the bottle a little bit, which I do feel to be a little bit of a, I didn't catch it until I just recently watched it just today. Just like, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do see, it does seem like it's a little bit of a wink to the tequila bottle in the worm in Poltergeist 2 from the 80s, where Dad's hitting the bottle a little bit, and then we'll just say he produces worms out of his mouth, and sees in the reflection of the faucet worms coming out of his eyes and mouth, and it's just this image that's not really happening. It does seem to me that that's like a wink from the famous tequila worm bit in Poltergeist 2. So obviously, just like with the original film, after the Carol Ann character is kidnapped, they hire some paranormal investigators, and there's this funny scene where this one guy he's trying to drill something, he's trying to put, like some kind of a temperature thermometer or something in the closet or something, and there's this scene which, you know, it's kind of their scene where it's just actually ate up a lot of running time probably, but this suspenseful scene where he's trying to drill into a whatever it is, a stud in the wall, so he can, I don't know why they can't just put the thermometer on the frickin' ground in the closet, but whatever, well, then he wouldn't have the scene. But to make long scene not as long, he basically, you know, ends up losing the whole drill, gets sucked through the wall, and he's reaching for it, and something grabs him and holds him up to the wall, and it's in 3D. You see the bit come through, you know, over here, and then over here, and then once more, like, and the guy's like, you know, and then the last one is like super 3D, and it's just, you know, that scene, although it was just like, we've seen it a bazillion times or whatever, it was fun for me, and particularly having the 3D Blu-ray and the last of the 3 drills where it kind of came out and just your blatant, you know, 80s cheese frickin' 3D just gimmick crap. I did find that scene to be a little long and drawn out, but I got a laugh out of it. It's fun. I like that just you know, just stuff that happens when they put it in movies, and just, you know, just put it in here just because, and there it is, and I had fun. So one thing I wondered going into this movie is how they're going to handle the clairvoyant, you know, for lack of a better description, the shorter or height challenge clairvoyant woman from the original Poltergeist trilogy. And I guess the way they handle it is just, like with so many aspects of this remake, is just going a completely different route. It's just and it's actually one of the more interesting characters, I guess. This one guy who is shown early on as the older daughter is watching on TV. This scary, you know, this haunted house TV show, reality TV show, where this one famous guy always goes in and clears, you know, these houses of paranormal activity or paranormal events and stuff. So this guy is recruited, and it turns out that, you know, the main paranormal chick that they got to help them and bring in those other 2 people to help her, she was formerly married to this guy, and there's a little bit of interesting, like, dynamic between them because they were formerly married, or a couple or something. So this guy's brought in, and, you know, I mean, let's face it, one of the things that I think is just so iconic about the original film, or yeah, we'll just say original film, is not only the Jerry Goldsmith music and Heather O'Rourke and just the whole family dynamic, and basically loving all of the family members and the actors and actresses that portray them in the original film. But is that classic height challenge, whatever you want to say, shorter, on the shorter side woman with the glasses. She's just like, you know, when you think of Poltergeist, you pretty much think of two things: Carol Ann and then that woman. And to like do a remake and not have any kind of attempt to like recreate her seemed like, it's like, okay, well, you know, you can go, you know, one of two ways. You can try to recreate that character, which might be seen as potentially even more of a, you know, thumb in your nose at her trying to recreate that, and or just go a completely different route where you just get a guy, some, you know, guy from reality TV shows of, you know, this ghost whisperer, a guy who clears haunted houses or whatever. And, you know, I mean, that aspect was, I respect that, and for this movie they went that way. And like I say, with the relationship between that guy and his former wife, who's the original person that the family goes to for the paranormal help, you know, that little bit of bickering between them is kind of fun. So I have no problem with the basically the recast or the different version of the hero, whatever, translucent, not translucent, transvoyant. What is that word? I don't know if I know it right now, but, you know, clairvoyant, transvoyant. Clairvoyant character that saves the day is not a, you know, height challenged older woman, but I guess a guy with all kinds of scars, normal height and all kinds of scars and a bad limp, and a guy from Ireland or wherever the hell he's from. I'm pretty sure I've seen this guy before. He's probably my second favorite character or actor in this movie after Sam Rockwell. So once he's brought in, obviously they do so many of the same things that they did in the original movie, where, you know, the closet is the indoor way, and then the hole on the ceiling is like the exit, and they do the whole rope thing, and rope goes in, closet comes out of the ceiling, and basically they send the drone in there in the new 21st century version of Poltergeist. Send the drone in there with the video camera to find the Carol Ann character, Maddie, and, you know, admittedly all of the ghoulish, ghastly, you know, apparition stuff we see in this movie, obviously it's a no-brainer. It's 2015, 2014, whenever the hell this movie came out. It's going to be CG. Everything you see, you know, there's going to be no practical zombie effects like there were in the original movies. Everything's going to be CG. So like the other side, you do get more of a glimpse of the other side than you've probably ever got in any of the original 3 Poltergeist films, but, you know, albeit it's frickin' CG, so it's really not, you know, unless CG is, I don't know, CG's got to be, they got to do something. It's hard for CG to like impress me these days, and admittedly the CG ghouly, ghastly, just, you know, lost souls and just that are writhing and just I'll make up all the walls and everything of the tunnels and everything that we see on the other side of, you know, once you go beyond whatever, the door in the closet or whatever, is just the traditional frickin' CG, creepy, scary stuff as the drone flies through it and we see it in 3D, and yeah, big deal. One thing I did like about the whole thing is that you know, the guy from the Irish or whatever the hell he is, you know, the guy who's hired to clear houses and is going to help get Carol Ann character Maddie back in this movie. He's actually tries to fly the drone originally, and then, you know, the scene's all serious and this and that, and he gets it going and starts flying, and then it hits the wall and falls down on the ground. I did think that was great, because let's face it, I mean, everyone who's tried to fly a drone indoors, or probably outdoors for that matter, has had the exact same thing happen, so that probably got a hell of a laugh in the theater, assuming anyone was there. I didn't know, because I never saw this in the theater, but I will admit that was funny when the drone actually hit the wall and the whole scene just turned into a joke right there, because that's just realistic. But obviously all's well that ends well. They end up getting, it's hard for me not to say Carol Ann, Maddie. Carol Ann, for all intents and purposes, out of the, you know, whatever, actually the younger brother in the turn of events from the original film, I think, younger brother feels guilt for the fact that I don't know. I can't remember why he feels guilt, but anyway, he feels guilt that the youngest daughter was taken, so he goes in there and basically comes out. I'm pretty sure the mom rescues Carol Ann from the original film. This time in this movie, the younger brother does, which I think is an interesting switch up. So, in this movie, you know, one of my complaints with the original one about how everything you think it's over and it just maybe goes on a little too long, and this one, the time in between, like, happy ending and let's all leave and drive away until, like, the stuff, I did feel like, because there was this line where it's like this famous line that this TV ghost hunter guy, ghost clearer guy says, like, the house is clean or whatever, and the older daughter wanted him to say the line for the cell phone video camera, and then the little girl says, but the house isn't clean though. You know, they're all packed in the vehicle ready to go, and it's just like, what? And then all of a sudden they just start backing up, and then, you know, the poltergeist grabs the vehicle and like brings it into the house, which I thought was really cool thing to do. They could have done, you know what, they could have done another wink to Poltergeist 2 and had a floating chainsaw in 3D, no less. It would have, I think they completely missed that opportunity, especially seeing as how this remake is in 3D. But alas, they forgot that, or to put that in there, or whatever, or didn't put it in there. But I did think it was kind of cool how the minivan or whatever it is was dragged back into the house, and then the you know, Maddie was kind of abducted and, like, you know, pulled up the stairs in this goofy ass, you know, whatever CG version of her and stuff, and sucked in there, and then basically the ghost hunter, ghost clearer guy from Ireland or wherever the hell he's from, goes in there and saves the day. And it is kind of cool how instead of the movie, you know, at the end of the first movie, the whole house like gets sucked into just a hole and just like disappears. That's really cool in one aspect, but the way it happens in this movie is like with the original Ghostbusters and the firehouse, like the roof just gets blown, you know, blasted off when I guess this guy, you know, the ghost hunter, ghost clearer guy actually helps these all these lost souls find the light or whatever, and there's a little bit of like, oh, is he dead or is he not? And I think the way the movie ends, we realize that he is in fact not dead. He's continued, maybe rekindled the relationship, if I'm understanding the way the movie ends with a little bit of footage, rekindled the relationship with the former wife possibly, and lives, and all's well that ends well. And you know how the original film, when they put the TV outside in the hotel, outside of the hotel room door, they do a little bit the same thing, different version, where, you know, when they got to the poltergeist house, the woman's like, yeah, that old tree's been here but since before the, you know, the house was, or whatever. So the end of the movie is, you know, the family looking at houses, and she says the same thing, and then they go driving away, and that's like a little ha 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 kind of a thing. But yeah, I did actually end up doing a little bit more of a more in-depth review with this, because I did take notes on this one, because this is like, I'm not familiar with this movie, so, and it was pretty forgettable, honestly. That's why I had to watch it again, and I didn't want to watch it again only to have to watch it a third time, so I took notes the second time. That's why this review is probably a little longer than normal. So, like I say, this movie is, I think, one of the better remakes of the 21st century. I can go as high as 2 stars out of 4 stars for Poltergeist 2014, 2015, whatever the hell year is stamped on it. I guess, in my opinion, one of the better horror 21st century remakes. You could do a lot worse. On to my brief Blu-ray 3D review. This isn't a movie that's got a whole hell of a lot of pop-out, which is absolutely fine. And the new 21st century resurgence of CG, a lot of, or not CG, 3D rather, a lot of stuff was more about depth than pop-out. And this Blu-ray, 3D Blu-ray release of Poltergeist remake is more or less the situation where there's not so much pop-out per se, but it's really, really healthy on, throughout the entire course of the movie, just general depth. Even when they went to that schwanky ass random dinner party, like just the one wide shot of like the table and all the, you know, wine glasses. I mean, you can just see like the depth of the table, like as it's going into the screen. Well, I'm coming out, but as the wine glasses are, you know, going further into the screen, and just see the depth of the people sitting there. This 3D Blu-ray is more about depth than a lot of stuff popping out. Obviously, you get a little bit of that with the the clown and, you know, the drill thing, but more or less this is just a Blu-ray, which is really a nice amount of just depth. It's not headache inducing. I just watched the whole 90 minutes just today, all the way through without having to stop and take a break. What I find when a movie is more just about subtle depth, you know, it doesn't really hurt my eyes anyway, as compared to something that might be more aggressive depth or have a lot of aggressive depth plus a lot of pop out and stuff. So this is a movie that I would regard as more, you know, really, really healthy, subtle depth, but not as subtle as, like, I think the first Spider-Man, like, was it Amazing Spider-Man? The first one of those, they did two of them. So the first one was like ridiculously like subtle 3D that almost just was a mockery of like 3D Blu-ray aficionados, because it was actually shot. I don't think it was even converted. I think it was actually shot in 3D and it was just barely in 3D. So this is, in my opinion, the 3D aspect of this on Blu-ray 3D is a perfect amount of depth. It's not too much, it's not too little, it's like right in the middle, right, just the right amount of depth. And you get a few pop-outs here and there, but this movie in the 3D is not about pop-outs. So I guess that pretty much does it for my, what I would probably most likely is maybe a lot longer review than I intended, but when I take notes that can happen. Kind of ironic that my review of, the remake might be longer than any of my reviews of the original films. I don't know what the time is right now as I'm sitting here talking about it, but as I continue to blab on and on, it gets longer and longer. I guess that pretty much does it. Hope you guys enjoyed the review. Thanks so much for watching, and as always, we'll catch you on the next video.